Hello and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to speak with everyday superheroes helping nonprofits. Joining me today is Nagi Alsubai to talk about his nonprofit, Peer Minds. Nagi, welcome to the show.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me on. Honored and glad to be part of this initiative for the nonprofits.
Yeah, and I'm excited to talk to you as well. This story basically we're going to cover is how and why you started your nonprofit in the hopes of inspiring fellow people to, if they're on the fence about starting one or want to learn more about your organization, to kind of be inspirational and also to share your message about why you do what you do. So I was curious if you could start off with just your background story, because I know it's a really interesting story and it really leads into what keeps you going today.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of Pure Minds, like the principle of it is what it does is that its mission is to empower youth and young adults in the Middle Eastern, North African, and South Asian communities. And the acronym for that is MENASA. So, in terms of taking lead and charge of their own mental health and wellness journeys through means of peer mentorship, peer support, and education, in a very culturally tailored way for that community.
Any particular reasons why MENASA? I can't even pronounce that even correctly. It's called
Hmm.
MENASA. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, MENASA is fine.
MENASA. So, any particular reason why MENASA you've chosen to work with MENASA youth individuals?
Well, I'm part of that community. So I'm originally, even though I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, originally my family and I are from Yemen in the Middle East. And why I wanted to focus on this particular community is because of my previous nonprofit experience. So I've done leadership roles that involve education and youth development that's catered to this community and catered to providing that culturally tailored service for them so that way they can be able to better navigate to better navigate here in this community in this foreign Western culture that they're not very familiar with. And that's through means of education, of job readiness, that kind of support. So that's where a majority of my nonprofit experience has come from. And I've noticed something missing within that, which is health and wellness, especially in terms of mental health. And that's why the focus is on the Manasa community, because they need that help and support. There's a high need for it, but there's a sort of I don't want to say lack, because there are technically a lot of resources out there, but there's a challenge with facing that stigma when it comes to mental health and wellness for that community.
I definitely want to get into some of those details, but I was curious to know as we get in, is any like this acronym MENASA? I haven't heard it before. We spoke. Is this like a popular grouping of individuals? Like I've heard of course, Middle Eastern people, North African people, and South Asian people, but I've never seen a situation or a community where they are all connected together in a single acronym and I guess, offered similar services. Is this something that you came up with or is something that existed already? And forgive my ignorance if it's the latter.
No, you know what? I mean, the acronym is usually MENA, so MENA. That's usually the Middle Eastern, North African, and South Asian is kind of on its own. But I have spoken to a couple of people in who are also in the nonprofit space and leadership roles who are in part of that community, and they're the ones that told me about Menasa, kind of just combining the two together. Um, so yeah, I think that's a fairly new term that's not really used regularly, but all in all, this still stands for this for Middle Eastern, North African, South Asian.
And I guess the reason why you decided on this particular group is because you found that in the context that you're offering certain programs and services, they apply to all three of them. Because you said at the beginning, if I remember correctly, if not in a previous show, how there's certain stigmas related to certain individuals or challenges that are specific to these kinds of individuals. Are these challenges common? I guess they are, but I just want to make sure I am on the right page. Are these common issues common across these three groups that you've grouped into one?
Oh yeah, very, very much so. Very similar. Our cultures are very similar in terms of traditions and roles within the community and the culture. Um, and also spirituality plays a role. So a lot of the Middle Eastern, North African, and South Asians can be of Muslim descent. Some of them can come from different religious backgrounds, but that spiritual commonality is much higher in comparison. So there's a lot of people within that community, and with my communities here in New York, whether it's attending local community centers, of Islamic faith or Hindu faith or whatnot. It's a lot of them are from those three backgrounds. So yeah, it's we're all one and the same, really, and that's a wonderful thing, really. It's not really in terms of like separation or looking at people very differently. It's really seeing the commonalities that we have with each other and utilizing it to the best of our abilities to uplift that community.
Mm. And I was curious to know then, like, what inspired you? What gaps did you see as you were going through the various organizations you worked at previously? What inspired you to say, you know what, there's a need here. I see something that I can offer, and therefore I should start an organization to help these individuals.
Well, the main thing for that is really two things. Is first is love. I love my people and I love my community. I love my family members. I love my friends, all within that community. That's the first thing that came to it. And the second thing is real lived experience from my own journey of struggle, of hardships. So, I mean, ever since I was a kid, it's very uncommon for males, especially within my community, as an Arab male, to be this caring, this emotional. So as a kid growing up, I was always seen as the overly emotional, the hypersensitive little boy that's not really accepted into our community. And growing up, that was always used against me, and that would make me even more emotional about it. So as I got older, the emotion, the strength of that emotional capacity kept growing. Um, and I like to build relationships off of that. So as an adult, now that I reflect and look back at that, I realize that instead of a weakness or something that's negative, it's really something that's actually positive and a quality that's really needed for just people in general. Now we're using different terms that I think are very helpful in this, such as emotional intelligence, empathy, compassion. So these are really qualities I want to implement for me as a human being and as a professional to connect with people. So utilizing that, and like I said, going back to my journey, especially as a young adult within my early to mid 20s, was that I had a marriage that wasn't going very well. Married for a few years. I experienced a lot of pressure since I was a teenager to succeed in life, right? And wasn't really given the proper amount of support from my own community to um, adapt to change or to adapt to any um, hardships so that I can be better equipped to face it. It was either do this or not and just struggle. Like I said, I got married at a young age and we were married for a few years. That wasn't working out. I was in a career in education before I went back to nonprofit leadership. I was in education and working in youth development, which is part of my love for, learning about people on an academic level, on an education level, but learning about them psychologically, academically, developmentally, and applying that to my educational career. Um, but the career itself was also very challenging. So when you're faced with a very difficult marriage, a very difficult career, family issues along the way, the issues grow. As you grow, your issues grow as well. And it was very difficult for me to face. And losing all of that was something that changed my life. If we're being totally honest, it changed my life in a way that is something that I really wouldn't wish on anybody. Right. So losing my marriage, losing my job, losing my finances, almost losing my home, all within a matter of 5 or 6 months altogether. So that was really detrimental for me. And that ended up being hospitalized because of that, because of my mental health issues, and almost taking my own life, unfortunately. So with that, after I was hospitalized and, was understanding what was going on and was released from the hospital, it was things did not get easy, one would think, but they didn't. When I got out of the hospital, it was literally probably 3 weeks later, 3 or 4 weeks later, that we got into um, a pandemic shutdown and the world itself changed. So everyone was in isolation. I was in actual, literal, physical, mental, and emotional isolation because I was living alone at that time now. I was no longer married. I was going through a divorce. I've never experienced divorce before, especially at a young age. So I don't know what to go through. And, stresses of family, stresses of life. The challenges were continuing and the difficulties were just staying. With that, it was, again, a life-changing moment. And then that's what directed me back into the nonprofit sector and using my experiences, having people come to me and say, we need you for what you're good at. And that kind of built me up little by little. And like I said, going into nonprofit leadership roles in terms of education, in terms of humanitarian aid and overseeing operations for international organizations, I used all my background and experiences. And, I'm a big fan of superheroes. So I like to say I combined all my powers and my networks and my relationships. And I decided to build my own nonprofit, which is Peer Minds. And I wanted to have a unique twist to it in terms of having that connectivity with the MENASA community. In terms that's very in a way that's very proactive, in a way that's very hands-on, and not just having conversations. Having conversations are very important about it, but I like to get my hands dirty and I like to act, not just speak. So that was the reason of formation of Pure Minds and why it's geared towards the MENASA community, primarily geared towards that community. And later down the line, I definitely want to target other communities as well, like the African American community, the Latino community, the Asian community. I want to target all the communities really, but for now, the demographic is the MENASA.
So first off, I wanted to thank you for sharing that touching story. I can't imagine it's easy to still talk about it because I've also been through a divorce. I know how painful it can be. So just want to thank you for just sharing that emotional story. Also
Of
thankful
course.
that you are able to turn that into something for good. And I've seen this, and I really appreciate people who are able to do this. Is they kind of look at themselves and say, I've been through this crap. I don't want anybody
Yeah.
else to go through it the same way I did, to struggle maybe without enough support. And therefore, I'm going to do something about it. And I'm going to build something to make sure I can prevent this, as best as I can, prevent this from happening again to people that I can connect with. And that is a fantastic inspiration and motivation to keep going because, you do sound very empathetic, and knowing that, you probably feel a lot of what the people you talk to feel, and you're able to help them, guide them, educate them, and make sure that they don't feel alone in the way that you felt alone.
Of course. And Alex, that's where the love comes from, because when you
Mm.
go through that darkness, that's a darkness that's so scary, right? And you have very little to no hope. And with my own story, I've also lost a close loved one who was young to addiction, who had mental health issues, and almost losing another loved one as well to a suicide attempt because she was going through severe mental health issues as well. And this is something with, realizing my qualities of connection and empathy. And, I don't mean to toot my own horn here, but, if that's what people tell me that I'm good at, then that's what I'm going to believe. That's a skill. That's a strong skill set to have. So, it's connecting again with, particularly with youth that are still navigating their own emotions in our community that don't know how to deal with life compared to us. And it's for me realizing, what is it that I need? What is it that I'm lacking in a way that I can help provide for my own community? And having conversations, personal conversations. And I'm very grateful to the people that opened up to me in my own community, that did not know how to open up to anyone, as seeing me as a source of trust, seeing me as a source of non-judgment, and just being authentic and real about what we're going through. Right. So it's utilizing that kind of connection. And it's something that I wish I had growing up. One of my favorite quotes to live by, and it's on my LinkedIn page, is be the person you needed when you were younger.
Hmm.
So that's very, that's crucial for me to be that sort of support system for one, myself, and for other people.
I'm getting a sense that Mensana group are a bit more, I'm not going to use the word challenged. Like as men in general, I think in this day and age have more challenges, and I've hear more and more about how a lot of men are struggling alone. They don't have the sense of support that they used to have, or in the past, the next generation is just struggling more. Men are struggling more than before. But I get a sense that this community has another layer to it. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about that. And I know could be a slightly sensitive topic, but I was really wanted to make sure it's like, what do you think where do you think the pressures come from that add that extra layer of pressure to succeed, pressure from the community, and so forth?
Well, I mean, Alex, we're here to get real, right? So, I mean, that's for that particular community, it's similar to other communities that are going through mental health challenges and high pressures, right? But what I noticed and what I experienced growing up is that it's going against an entire belief system, an entire cultural, traditional belief system, a spiritual belief system that unfortunately they've combined into one, which is not the right way to do things. We're supposed to see spirituality and religion different to culture, but unfortunately, this certain community has tended to combine the two into one, and we're not really able to tell the difference of what's spiritual or religious and what's cultural, you know? So this particular community, especially with the men, it's that you're challenging that system. You're going against the ties that is supposed to be the status quo or is supposed to be normal, right? So that's the biggest challenge that we're facing as MENASA men, and I think men in general as well. And that's why when we see statistics and research, suicide rates and mental health challenges are much higher among men compared to women, females. Not that they're struggling, of course they have their struggles as well, but the research speaks for itself. So yeah, that's the main thing with that particular community is the spirituality, the belief system of challenging that. And what I want to do both as a person and as a professional with Pure Minds and just as an advocate for mental health is they assume that that people like me are going against the status quo or challenging that. But no, what I like to do is I want to unify those concepts, the spiritual beliefs, the cultural beliefs, and getting mental health support, because mental health is health. If you're going through physical health issues, then everyone is going to advise you and say, go seek professional help. You need to go see a doctor. You need to take medication, and that sort of stuff. And you need to do the same thing with your mental health as well. And there's proof of that within religion. Like, for example, I'm Muslim, and in the Muslim community, there's proof that that's written in our religion that you're supposed to seek professional help for both physical and mental health, right? Like I said, it's the spirituality of it. So what I want to do is I want to unify that. I want to combine all of that to make sure that we are all being the best, healthiest versions of ourselves without having to deter away from our cultural traditions, from our spiritual traditions, right? The analogy I like to use is the three-legged stool, right? One leg is your mental and emotional health, one leg is your physical health, and one leg is your spiritual health. If you're missing one or if one is weak, then what does that mean for the entire stool? That it's going to fall, right? So if it falls, then you completely fall apart. I want to have all three legs healthy so that way your stool can be very stable. And that's what it is with that particular community. And I'm very, very happy and I'm very grateful to have built so many connections and relationships with people in both males and females within that community that have the professional background that can help change the narrative, and help us be more productive members of our own community in terms of seeking health and wellness.
Yeah, hopefully this tool not only has three legs, but the legs are more or less the same length too. So that also helps with disability.
Of course, exactly.
I'm curious if you can get into some of the programs and services you offer, because we've talked about it as a concept, but I was hoping more tangibly, what do you offer, and how did you make those decisions to say, these are the kinds of programs and services I want to offer or that resonate most with this community?
Yeah, for sure. So it goes back to when I was coming back to the nonprofit world. There was a small initiative. This was during the height of the pandemic. There was a small initiative that was happening virtually of different people of the MENASA community that were coming together to discuss mental health issues, which doesn't happen very often. And one of them was a friend of mine who reached out to me, and he and I collaborated together before and said, I think you should be part of this. And this is still during all the challenges I had just being released from the hospital and going through that divorce and whatnot. And I said, you know what? Sure. What do I have to lose? So I joined, and conversations were happening, and it goes back to that. It's just conversation stuff, but nonetheless, we're still trying to bring it to light. And I was very anxious to just share my own thoughts about what's going on and whatnot. But then I realized a small little voice inside my head just said, just say it, be that voice that's needed within the community. And I just very anxiously, I still did it anyway. I spoke to all these strangers about my experiences. And I said, with my professional background, having this connectivity with individuals, I need to have something that's more hands-on and proactive. And that's where I always look to for mentorship. And that's the key word that keeps popping up in my head. When I was young in high school and college, I loved having mentors in my life. And I was a big fan of pop culture. So I loved seeing, mentorships happen on TV when it comes to, one of, one of my favorite shows is an animated show called Avatar: The Last Airbender. And there's a couple of characters on there that one is older and wiser, who's mentoring his nephew on the show, who's going through serious internal and external conflict. And he was his voice of reason. And Alex, I don't know if you've heard of it. Have you heard of the show called Boy Meets World?
I have, but I haven't. Well, I know the movie. Isn't there a movie or a TV show or a book or
No,
a comic?
it's a TV show. It's a
Okay.
TV show. It's a sitcom. It's a sitcom that came on TV in the 90s. So one of my favorite shows to watch was Boy Meets World. For those of you out there, hopefully you guys know it. One of my favorite characters is Mr. Feeney. So he's, it's a show about a young boy who's navigating the challenges and the positivities of life, growing up as an adolescent up until, early adulthood. And along the way, he had this teacher of his that was very wise. It was a very iconic role in the show. So it's roles like that and my own experiences that made me love the power of mentorship. And it goes back to that quote of mine that I enjoy so much: be the person you needed when you were younger. So my thought is, how do we help them on a more productive, more hands-on, interactive way, as opposed to just having conversations? And that's when I thought to myself, we need to have like a mentorship program or something like that. And that's really the main services for what Peer Minds is that the peer mentorship program, peer support program, is a way for people in the MENASA community to be matched with each other from the same cultural backgrounds that are going through the same lived experiences. And that way they can help elevate each other in their mental wellness journeys while getting support along the way in terms of workshops and resources and trainings that are geared and tailored towards the MENASA community as well. So the purpose of this program is to connect people and to help develop them to be young leaders and change agents in the community, right? To have the conversations, to connect on a personal level, on a spiritual level, on an uplifting level for each of the community members, for especially youth in particular. So that's the main, I guess would call it like the bread and butter of Peer Minds, right? And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to just not have the conversations anymore. And I wanted to be more, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but to move. I wanted there to be more action when it comes to mental health support for the MENASA community. And other, some services that we've done so far. Last year, I actually started an Arab and South Asian men's mental health series. It's online, virtual, and it's a peer support group where we talk about different topics that affect us as males in general, and that affect us as males in our particular communities of, like I said, the MENASA community. So we cover topics like suicide, drug addiction, substance use, cultural stigma and awareness. And I bring in professional speakers that I have good relationships with that are also MENASA males that are in the mental health space, whether they're CEOs of their own mental health initiatives, um, actual licensed clinicians and psychiatrists and therapists, or even just advocates that do that. And we talk about different topics. And since then, it's a recurring series. And since then, we've had definitely over 100 males in the Arab and South Asian communities that have joined in different parts of the world to have these discussions and to just to be open and sharing of our struggles. And along the way, we also had some referrals, so some young individuals that are going through um, whether it be substance use or just mental health issues. I've had a lot of parents approach me during tabling events or whatnot, and to have these open conversations with me and say like, hey, my son is struggling, my daughter's struggling, what do I do? And although Pure Minds is not a clinical organization where we're not able to just yet provide clinical services, that's the power of relationship building. So with all these relationships that I have and potential partnerships with MENASA tailored clinical services for that community, that's what we'll refer them to. So yeah, it's a very, very small organization, and we're working on, especially me, I'm doing a lot of this stuff on my own, is, really officially launching a major program like this, because it does take a lot of time and strategy and work and the right partnerships to make this very operational.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. So let's start with mentorship. I totally agree with you. I think this is something that we lack generally, men, women today, is the ability to have a mentor. I do it. I volunteer actually as a mentor for McGill University engineering students in Montreal, Canada, and I take on two students at a time, and I it's basically trying to give them advice on where they should take their career based on their interests and stuff like that. And I find it's so rewarding on both sides to have this mentee relationship, because there's both we both learn along the way, and I find it's I get a sense, at least there's a lack of this kind of relationship in the world today, where people just, I don't know, there's a sense you have to do it all on your own now, and grow up, if be a man, if you don't know how to do it yourself, just figure out a way, versus,
Yeah, figure it out.
I mean, I don't know.
Unfortunately.
I have a sense, at least, that in the past, and I don't know how many years ago, but in the past, mentors were very popular, and it really allowed people to flourish on both sides. So happy to hear that's a big part of your organization. In addition to that, you mentioned more is about peer mentorship. Is that what I understand? That people who are, I mean, I guess that's where the name comes from, right? Peer minds. But the idea is that, are you linking people together that are more or less peers of each other? Because I would consider that to be more of a tribe, which also I advocate for, is finding people that you connect with, that's not necessarily in your, well, in my case at least, not necessarily in my domain, let's say Salesforce architects, but people who are adjacent to that or even far away, to get different opinions and meet on a regular basis and just have good conversations to share and get different perspectives on life. I would call that more of a tribe. So I was wondering, is the core to have a mentor-mentee relationship, where someone is more of a senior person helping more of a junior person? Or are you these days focusing on just more peer-to-peer type stuff, equally sharing information to hope that both of them will benefit from it?
Well, technically, it's both. You need to have, for this particular mission, we want to incorporate that tribal component to it. That way, it further builds the understanding of what our community members and youth are going through, right? And it's also what you just mentioned as well, having like kind of like a senior junior kind of position where someone a mentor can be a little bit older and more experienced in life itself and all aspects of it, that are going through lived experiences that can really help a younger person within their community kind of navigate through what they're going through. And in a way, it's healing for both of them. It's a self-heal and it's a heal of another person, slowly and surely.
And most of these meetings, are they mostly virtual? Are they in person? Do you have a bit of both? Would you like to have more in person or more virtual? Like, where do you see? Because generally, the best way, of course, of connecting with people is in person. Obviously, it's harder to find or harder to do if you're across different regional
Right.
areas. So, do you offer a mix of the two, or is it mostly online?
Yeah, I definitely want to have a mix of the two for sure, because, in person definitely builds the connection to be as stronger as opposed to something virtual. But we need to have that flexibility in terms of maybe a mentor and a mentee are not in the same particular physical location, but they have a good relationship. So we have to have that option open as well. So it's a mix of both.
And then you mentioned partnerships. I think I get the sense also that partnerships are very important, connections and partnerships. I was curious to know, how do you find your partners? Like, is it just volume, or are you more directive on with it? And what kind of partners do you normally look for?
Well, I mean, I go off the rooftop of my car and just scream, anyone want to partner with me? And just throughout the whole city, and they're just like, who? It's like, oh man, just another New Yorker. But no, I mean, like, I'm very I love networking and I love connecting with people both on a personal and professional level. And I like to research. Peer Minds is still a new organization that has a long way to go, right? So it's a matter of putting the right partnerships in place, or even just collaborations, right? So especially like I said with the men's series that I have, a lot of it was collaborations, and building relationships in the past with particular people that are in the community that have that same likeness, that have the same passion for it. Those are the people that you try to associate with. Those are the people that I look for to be part of my everything, my networks and my friendships. So that's yeah, that's definitely a thing. Constantly going to networking meetings, constantly being aware of what's going on and seeing what kind of relationship can be built out of that. For me, networking is one thing, but it's very surface level for me. It's just like shaking hands, saying hi, and that's it. But I'm looking to build a relationship with you. If I feel like that we're very aligned and we're attuned, then I want to have a relationship with you. And I want us to further elevate uplift and elevate each other and ourselves. I'm not very transactional with that. I know many relationships out there, unfortunately, even professional ones, can seem transactional, which to an extent can be okay, but still character is an important thing, and passion is an important thing, and humanity is top of all.
I was wondering if you could share maybe a success story or a happy moment, something you celebrate, or maybe in the recent past, helping someone, being able to uplift someone who needed it.
It's a lot of the youth that I connected with in grow up in my neighborhood, in my community, just honing in on those humane skills, listening, communicating, connecting, and reflecting on my own experiences, saying this is what they need, this is what you needed when you were young. Give that to them. And that's forming the relationships and having and building that trust. I take trust very, very seriously. So when somebody trusts me with something, it's sacred, pure and simple. And having to, again, when it comes to collaborations, when I'm co-volunteering or tabling with other initiatives that I started out with and who are very, very supportive of Pure Minds and who like to collaborate with it as well, because they like me as a as a human being, and they like me as a professional as well. Um, Helping them in terms of engaging in conversations, especially with young males who are really against, or who are really just against mental health support, but having conversation with them that meets them at their level and utilizing things like spirituality and culture to actually prove that mental health is still something that needs to be addressed and treated, and seeing their minds actually change, seeing that their little things like their stance change, seeing that their perspective starts to change, and how the conversation now is going in a different direction, in a more positive direction. So those are definitely successes within that. That's definitely what motivates me to continue going. And in the nonprofit field, the nonprofit sector itself is not an easy thing, especially when you deal with a startup. Pure Minds is still a startup, and that's a lot of work to do. And you're wearing so many different hats. You're wearing every single hat that you need in order to just get it moving. And then it'll move slow in the beginning, but you just remember why you're doing it in the first place. Remember the heart you put into it. Remember the people that you've connected with. Remember the so many other people like you and I, Alex, like we just met recently and all of a sudden we clicked and now we want to talk more with each other about
Mm.
what we do, which is a great thing. And that's something that excites me as well. I can't wait to see all the other people that I have yet to meet.
You mentioned a bit earlier how at one point in time you would love to expand to outreach to more communities. Any other, because there's a lot of different directions you can go as well too in your short-term future. I wanted to know if you have a kind of a plan, or at this point it's still more in the experimental phase and trial and error to see what works, what sticks, and where you'd like to go next.
Well, just continuing to shout off the rooftop of my car and see where that takes us. But no, I'm very into strategy. Strategy is something I enjoy doing. I like to plan. I like to put on paper and collaborate with people in terms of that. And always I'm very education is very important to me as well, just as much as mental health is. Education of life, learning new skills, learning about different fields and industries in a way that helps you develop yourself to the highest, professional that you can be and highest person that you can be. But definitely want to target other communities as well. Like I mentioned earlier, the African American community, the Latino community, a lot of underserved communities to the point where it's now that Pure Minds is, down the line 5, 10 years from now, God willing, that it'll be able to serve all the communities. So yeah, definitely a plan is in place for that. Of course, you got to take a strategy into consideration of what that's going to look like, and just operationalizing the programs to the best of their abilities and how they can be again tailored to those communities as well. Because I've dealt with people that are in the African American community as well, and the Latino community that are in mental health initiatives or go through mental health issues as well. Like I said, I was in education, so I was a full-time school teacher that was teaching in underserved communities, in schools that are in low income communities, that are in dangerous high crime communities as well. The demographic was mainly African American and Hispanic. So that's something I also experience, and I want to target that community as well. But like I said, you gotta work in a linear way, right? In a sequential and linear way to make sure that everything is functioning to the best of its capacity for that. And it's a learning process. You learn along the way. There's so much I'm still learning. And, even though I've had several years of nonprofit experience, the learning never stops.
That's for sure. And I wish you tremendous success. I was wondering if you could share with people how, if a listener is would like to get involved in some way, what is the best way to reach out to you, or, can they donate? How can they contribute to your cause?
Yeah, of course. So on our social media platforms, we have Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Our Instagram username is at Peer Minds Mentors, and our Facebook and LinkedIn is Peer Minds. So definitely be on the lookout for those. Those are definitely pretty active and showing what we do. Our website is peerminds.org, where you can find a little bit more information about what we do. Yeah, if anyone wants to reach out to me, they can definitely reach out to me in terms of through email, if they want to learn more or want to be involved in it, then they can reach out to me at Nagi, Nagi, at peerminds.org. And let's have a conversation,
Yes, I hope people do reach out. And Nagi, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you so much for doing what you do.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you for bringing light to this and providing me the platform to showcase that this is a need for all, not just the MENASA community, but for all the communities, and especially with males and females and young adults in particular. So I really want to thank you for bringing that into light.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine. All right. Well, that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me again in the next Agents of Nonprofit.